Aloha and welcome back. So we just did the Kavernacle video. Say that. Now we talked about Russia, and this is Jimmy Dore talking to Matt Taibbi, how the U.S. destroyed Russia and Putin built it back with Matt Taibbi. And so in the Kavernacle video, I got it. He talked about the oligarchs taking over Russia and how he hopes that the oligarchs don't take over the world. He was talking about the Trump stuff. I'll leave a link at the end of the video to the Kavernacle video. But I just thought I started this and I watched a couple of minutes of it, but I figured I'd watch it here with you guys because it pretty much pertains to the video we just watched. If you watched the Kavernacle video, oh yeah, here we go.
Tell people that you were there. Tell people how bad it was after communism fell when the economic hitmen descended on Russia, and how it
The economic hitman. We've done a video on that.
We economic hitmen have managed to create the world's first truly global empire, and it's basically a secret empire. We do it in many ways, but principally, we identify a country that has resources our corporations covet, like oil, arrange a huge loan to that country from the World Bank or one of its sisters. The money never actually goes to the country. It goes to our own corporations to build big infrastructure projects in that country that help a few very wealthy people, but don't benefit the majority of the people who are too poor to buy electricity or have cars to drive on the highways, and yet they're left holding a huge debt that they can't repay. So we go back at some point and say, you know, you can't pay your debts. Give us a pound of flesh. Sell your oil real cheap to our oil companies. Vote with us on the next critical UN vote. Allow us to build a military base in your backyard. Something along these lines. And when we fail, the jackals go in and either overthrow or assassinate these leaders. And if the jackals fail, as they did in Iraq, then we send in the military. I don't think the failure is capitalism. I think it's a specific kind of capitalism.
So instead of Iraq, it was Russia. But here we go. Economic hitman. So that's what
after communism fell when the economic hitmen descended on Russia, and how it kind of destroyed their whole society, and then Putin put it back together.
Well, this is an important thing for Americans to understand because in a lot of ways it explains our own politics, or it predicted our own politics quite well. Russia after 1991, or the former Soviet Union, they were kind of a mess. The empire was falling apart, so they welcomed in all of these European and American advisors who essentially ran the Kremlin. There were figures in the Kremlin like Anatoly Chubais and Yegor Gaidar, who was the prime minister. They were Harvard-educated guys who spoke English, and they were in constant contact with the embassy there, who helped them design everything from the Russian stock market to privatization schemes, some of which were incredibly corrupt. I mean, we're talking about, there was one con there called loans for shares that involved the government lending money to banks so that they could buy companies the size of ExxonMobil at like a 100% discount or a 99% discount. The guys who got Yukos, which is nearly the size of Exxon, they bought it for $170 million, and most of that was borrowed money from the government. And it's worth 100 times that. Anyway, there's your oligarch class, and people got incredibly rich, and they let everybody else suffer.
So the oligarch class was set up by the United States.
And there were millions of premature deaths. There was rampant crime and alcoholism. Like, even for Russia, it was terrible. I mean, you would wake up in the morning and you'd have to be stepping over, drunks to get to the street. Cities that didn't have any murder suddenly had 5,000 a year. Jesus. And so people they got tired of democracy within 10 years, and Putin came up, and his message was, okay, enough of these Westerners running our country. I'm going to make a new deal. All the oligarchs are no longer allowed to expatriate their money. They got to reinvest it here at home. You're going to lose some freedoms, but we're going to put the country back together. And that's what happened. Putin he is everything that they say he is in terms of his illiberalism and violence and all that other stuff. I mean, I knew people who got killed invested after investigating him, but Russia is a much more functional country than it was in 1999, and that's why he has support. So it's not dissimilar to what's going on in the United States. People will get tired after a while of being ignored, I think.
And
That's like kind of saying Trump is our Putin. At
so,
least I
you
think
know,
that's what he's saying.
when people would say to me, "Well, that Putin's a thug, Jimmy, and he has, he has journalists killed and things like that," and I was like, "Now who's being naive, Kay? I mean,
Well, right.
First, I mean, we already talked about Gonzalo Lira. But how about we talk about what they were doing to Julian Assange right out in public, and the crime that he committed was investigating the United States war machine. That was his crime, and so there's absolutely no difference between Putin and the leaders of the United States. George
Or
Bush,
Yeltsin, for that
Just we're the good guys and they're the bad guys, so we can do it, but they can't.
matter. I mean, they were massacring journalists the entire time I was there in the 90s.
Who was?
George
Or
Bush.
Yeltsin, for that matter. I mean,
Yeltsin.
they were massacring journalists the entire time I was there in the 90s. I knew a guy got blown up by an exploding briefcase. There was another who was forcibly put into a mental institution. Another guy got shot in the head. Another guy was beaten to death with a hammer.
Oh gosh.
He worked at a place called Novaya Gazeta. And then, yes, when Putin came to power, there was more of that, and it was more organized. But there were lots and lots of journalists killed under Yeltsin,
More organized.
and that was all with our blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, remember? I mean, Time Magazine, 1996, Yanks to the rescue, right? There's Boris Yeltsin waving an American flag because we had American advisors in the Kremlin at the time. They had an office.
Well, Boris Yeltsin, yeah.
So
He was kind of like our Ponzi or whatever, our puppet. Is he the guy? No, that's the thing on his head, or was he before him? Gorbachev. Gorbachev had the thing on his head. Gorbachev was the one that was there when they fell, I think, and then Yeltsin was the one that was there when we were influencing them, having the oligarchs, or building up the oligarchs and all that.
we're pretending that was all cool at the time.
And
But as soon as someone else did it, it was different.
Right? If somebody else does it, it ain't okay. But when we do it, when we kill journalists or we do some old what do you call it, Palestine type stuff or whatever, when we kill, it's cool. But when Russia does it, it ain't. I ain't saying it's cool when anybody does it necessarily. Non-violent type of person. I don't think we should be in wars. I think we should be building. But I just wanted to share this because they were talking about what the Kavernacle was talking about, and I just put that out, so I figured I'd put this out. And that's how we do when you get your information from across the spectrum.